Hello everyone. Before today's episode, I would like to take this opportunity to tell you about PowerHourPod.com. With the NFL season around the corner, NFL DFS is back. NFL DFS is a different way of playing fantasy football. As a subscriber of PHP last year, I cannot be more happy about my growth as a DFS player. Last year, we have premium content such as articles, podcasts, and a Slack channel to help us break down each and every single slate that's offered on DraftKings and FanDuel. This year, PHP is dedicated to become even better with added tools. We have tools such as the wide receiver cornerback matchups, where you can quickly break down where your wide receiver would line up, where the cornerback would line up, and exploit the matchups that are available from week to week. We also have an injury tool which will let us know if a player is in and out of the lineup, how it would affect the team as a whole, and how it will affect your preparations in lineup building constructions. If you are interested in subscribing, use my promo code FFDynasty101 to get $10 off your subscription. Once you're subscribed and become part of the family, there are tons more discounts being given to you for other sports as well as postseason NFL. Don't miss this opportunity now. Join the team and become a better DFS player.
Better start watching these games, bro, because you're going to need to do what these champions doing if you're going to be a champion. You got to hear what I'm telling you. If y'all going to be great on that field, you got to have a why. You got to have a reason for why you do what you do. See the passion. Every game, you see the energy. He come out every game like, y'all follow me. Wins and losses. It's about walking. This is about understanding. I'm going to make the play or I'm going to walk the play you made. It's simple. It's a man on a man every time we play the game. It'll never change. It's about winning one-on-one match. Fight to fight. It's our fight to fight. It's everything you got today.
And welcome to a new episode of a Dynasty Mind. My name is Chris Chung, FF Dynasty 101 on Twitter. Tonight I have a returning guest, one that needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyway because he had has one of the best offseason that I could remember, one that could rival even the rookie quarterbacks that are now finding a new job. Eliot, you are the sports product manager of the Quant Edge. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yes, man. A lot of people really enjoyed your first time appearance, and they really are taking into consideration the process that you shared. But tonight, I just want to bring you on to retell some of the process, how it has unfolded since we last talked, and of course, that a lot of people didn't catch one of the things that we're talking about, the double dipping. And people haven't learned from that yet, so I'm going to have you talk a little bit more about that and what you've seen unfold during this offseason. But so far, tell us a little bit about how your offseason went and what is your position? What does it mean to be a sports product manager at the Quant Edge?
So, yeah, I would say I had a pretty crazy offseason, right? From the Draft Daily podcast to working with 4 to getting this position at the Quant Edge, which is a startup company. And as a sports product manager, basically, I mean, what don't I do is the short answer. But I'm basically overseeing the sports stuff. I'm doing marketing. I'm doing website design. I did a hiring process. I'll be creating content, both podcasts and articles. Doing the tool designs. I'm actually the one who's building the physical tools, but I am doing the tool design and layout of stuff. So, kind of get what it means to be the sports product manager is anything that has to do with sports, and right now is football. I'm in charge of it. So it's really exciting. It's really cool. I love the way everything is turning out. It's continuing to develop day by day. Whenever you're in a startup, it's an incredible workload. Some mornings I'll start at 3 a.m. and go to 8 or 9 p.m. and then then hop on podcast for a few hours. But you know what? I'm doing what I love, and I get an opportunity to do what I love every day. So I'm trying to make the most of every single day, and continue to build and get better and help grow the Quant Edge.
Absolutely. And you're starting to build a fantastic team, a lot of the recognizable names out there. And I'll let you talk a little bit more about that at the end of the show, how people can find your work, what they can stand to benefit from you. And I know for sure that football is the one thing that you'll help us win in this season. So let's dive in a little bit back into your Dynasty Mind. Last time when we talked, we were in the midst of a combine season. You were warning us about the double dipping that people should avoid doing, that they shouldn't increase a value from something that they've already seen on film, and they try to enhance a player's value because of what they saw at the combine. How has that process unfolded over this preseason? Do you still see people making that same mistake with player evaluation?
Yeah, I don't think it'll ever stop. It's funny. I mean, listen, has Ronald Jones had a horrible preseason? Absolutely. Like, you know what? I know the man has more carries than yards. I think I'm blanking on the guy's name, um, so I feel bad. But the guy from PFF tweeted today that Ronald Jones has been contacted in the backfield more than any other back other than one player in the preseason so far. And, people are really knocking him for his receiving work, but if you counted on receiving work, then you were legit making things up. He had never caught more than 15 passes. He was not comfortable running routes. He was not used in pass protection at all instead of fresh and running back was. So, right now we're counting it against Ronald Jones for not catching the ball when that was never who he was going to be anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
I find one thing really interesting, and maybe you can speak to this. And listen, I know a lot of people like Chris Carson, right? And nobody likes Devontae Booker. And first off, I just want to make this very clear before I say anything that this is not Eliot on the Devontae Booker hype train. Okay, I don't want anything to do with that. But Booker gets listed as a starter, right? And Freeman is the backup. And people are like, well, Freeman's the better player, man. They spent draft capital on him. He's going to be the starter. Look at this. He had a couple of nice runs. And you know what? It's just a matter of time, and Freeman's going to blow up. And then it's with Carson and Penny. Penny had way more draft capital spent on him. Carson has way less. We've actually seen Booker be an effective receiver in the NFL. I think he was 7th in yards per target among running backs last year. He actually averaged more yards per target than Jarvis Landry. I love that stat for whatever reason. And Carson's had one good NFL game, and I know he looked good in this preseason game, but people are like, Penny's dead. He's not going to see the field this year. Carson's the guy. And it's funny how Booker's listed first on the depth chart, but we ignore that for our bias towards Royce Freeman. But, people don't like Penny as much, and they're like, well, Carson's first on the depth chart. And I feel like with preseason, the double dip is confirmation bias, right? The second anyone sees anything they like about a guy they like, they're like, I told you so. You know what? I'm all in. And the second they have a guy that they like who doesn't do much, they kind of start making excuses or they ignore it. And then if someone they don't like is struggling, keep in mind, we're talking about with Ronald Jones. I mean, is he had the worst preseason so far? Absolutely. Actually, Naheem Hines, neither one of them are doing great. But the point is, Jones has had 12 carries, and if you go on Twitter, people are calling him a bust, telling you I told you so, and I never liked Ronald Jones. And, for me, if Ronald Jones is what, like 106?
In that range, yes. Yeah, 106 through 107, yeah.
If you could trade like a late first or early second for him, because that owner may be panicking, that I think that's a winning dynasty move, right? Because there's not enough has happened for someone's stock to drop that much, but people love to overreact in preseason.
You are talking exactly to the same tune that I was thinking about, because from the beginning, if you have done your homework, if you've listened to the Draft Daily Pod, you knew what these players' skill sets are and what the situation they're coming in after the draft. You know that a couple of contexts, some have definitely gained some value from where they landed, and some have actually caused for us to be more patient about them. But at the end of the day, what you have decided on, how your evaluation unfolded before the draft or even shortly after the draft, and how you have ranked the players, you shouldn't let injuries affect them that much, because you're not supposed to be counting on rookies to be that big of a contributor right off the bat. They're bonuses if they can break out like a Ezekiel Elliott, or they can offer you a consistent week-to-week upside like who was that other rookie that recently just was amazing last year?
Well, everyone was amazing last
Yeah,
year.
everyone.
Hunt, Alvin Kamara, Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey. I mean, these guys were all some of the top running backs last year. And, running back is a bit of an exception in terms of how much you can count on a guy in year one, because that's the position where coaches tend to be most comfortable playing guys. And draft capital has a huge impact on how much you like a guy. But Penny's a great example. So, like, I'm now known as a Rashad Penny guy, despite the fact that I didn't like him coming into the draft. But then they spent a first-round pick on him, and he was going cheap. And historically speaking, when teams draft running backs in the first round in the last 5 years or 6 years, I think they average 13.5 targets and touches per game. So that's that's volume right there. Penny was going in the 5th round. Now he goes in like the 7th round because people are completely jumping ship. And to me, I'm locked into volume. And people are like, well, I'm worried about the pass block. You weren't worried about the pass blocking 3 months ago, because that was a major concern then. And the craziest part to me is, as much as he sucks at it, Brian Schottenheimer thinks he's doing great. So,
you at Brian Schottenheimer has a history, right?
Yeah, he has the issue of getting everything wrong, so that makes me feel like, Penny's right on pace to be a terrible pass blocker. But just the point of that, I think so often we want to be right or wrong about guys, and we don't give them time to develop, right? Like, the old rule was you used to have to give a draft 3 years to grade it, and now we want to give it 3 practices. What did a beat reporter said? I knew it. That everyone wants to be right, and they treat the process as them being right, and guys' stocks really soar in that time. And it's basically like basic finance 101, right? Buy low, sell high. If you do that with football, if you can take the emotion out of it and try to take overreacting to something out of it, I think you can gain a major edge on your competition.
Absolutely, and this is the right time to do so, because all of that, it seems like all of the values, all of the homework that people put in their work in April, May, June, suddenly it just goes away because now they're not performing. Now they're not showing up in preseason. And it's like, this is ridiculous. This is preseason we're talking about. Yes, injury hurts their opportunities, hurts their practice time, but that is not something that I think it's going to hold back Rashad Penny from contributing, or that Ronald Jones has absolutely no value at all or has no contribution at all this year. I'm expecting both of them to be heavily involved at some point.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And look at a guy like Alvin Kamara last year. He didn't really see the field for the first 4 games because they had the veteran Adrian Peterson, and they're like, well, you're not good anymore. And we moved on. Like, the thing about Ronald Jones is, and I was low on Jones coming out.
Yeah, same.
But I love the landing spot because the Bucs. But now everyone's like, oh, Peyton Barber's kind of good. Is Peyton Barber kind of good? Because we have 2 years of sample size to say he's not, and he was an undrafted guy from Auburn. And I love the Peyton Barber story. I mean, I think if you don't know it, look it up. I don't want to butcher all the details, but he left early to take care of his family who was really struggling and all that stuff. So I want Peyton Barber to be successful. But if we have to bet on the guy who's proven to be a Jag for 2 years against the guy who was a 2nd-round pick, like, they're probably going to put the 2nd-round pick on the field a fair amount this year, and people are completely jumping ship.
Yeah.
I at the same time with Chris Carson, right? Like, this is another thing. After they drafted Penny, no one wanted Carson. But if you could swap Carson out for like a 1st-rounder right now, that might make a lot of sense too, because especially in Dynasty, people get excited right now because, Evan Silva or Roto World will say, well, we'll talk about how they like Carson, or there'll be a report that Chris Carson could be a bell cow this year. The second that starts happening, you sell that because he's not going to be a long-term bell cow. There's a 0% chance he's a long-term bell cow running back with Rashad Penny. Has to tear ACLs in back-to-back years. Like, he's gonna really cut into Carson's workload, worst or best case scenario for Carson. So, you always want to take advantage of everyone else overreacting.
Yeah, I think that's some of the processes that you and I do share. Is we look at the field, we look at how people react, and then we find the edge by finding where the suboptimal decisions are being made. So in this case, values are shifting dramatically when they shouldn't. We're going to see it in ADP. We're going to see it in trade talks. People may not react so much to the penny news yet for those who drafted him early, but eventually you'll see the news wearing on them, the buzzes and all that, and that is the best time to just engage the owner. Hey, what would you think about, Calvin Ridley or Son? I forgot his first name. Son. Yeah, Cortland Son. Those were drafted after Ronald Jones or after Rashad Penny, but now people are like, oh, maybe I can regain those value because I'm not giving up too much capital and I'm gaining a player that's at least going to be, I can see them on preseason, or at least they'll be playing in the first week.
Yep. I think you summed it up perfectly there. Because, Cortland's a great example where people were a little bit down on the landing spot. He's had a good camp. Mm-hmm. Everyone's now losing their mind. The Broncos are going to run so many 3 wide receiver sets. Demaryius Thomas is going to be good this year. Emmanuel Sanders is going to have a fantastic year. Cortland Sutton's going to be amazing. Royce Freeman is going to be Rookie of the Year. And I'm like, what? Like, is this going to be the greatest offense of all time? Like, Case Keenum's still the quarterback.
Led by Case Keenum,
They still don't have a great offensive line, and they're still built around their defense. Like, I think we start forgetting. I think Mike Clay or J.J. Zachariason, one of these guys said it, and I think it's so important. When you do projections, and this is the simplest thing ever, they all have to add up, right? Like, so if a quarterback throws 30 passes, there can't be more than 30 targets in a game. But so often with these preseason hype machines, like, we're projecting Keenum to throw 30 times a game, but somehow all these guys are, getting 10-plus targets a game. It's like the math becomes not possible on some of these hype trains.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And you cannot look at them in isolation. I think that's the biggest thing that if you see a lot of people do, this guy's going to be awesome, that guy's going to be awesome. Well, you're still down on Case Keenum, so what gives? Something's not adding up, and it's simple math, right, to make projections. Now, since we're talking about people making adjustment, where it should be made, where it shouldn't be made, let's talk a little bit about players whose value theoretically should be frozen. We're talking about Darius Guice, who is going to miss the whole year. Yeah, whatever value he was drafted at, it was a top 2, 3, 4, or 5 pick, wherever you had Guice after that. Now his value is supposedly frozen. If we're projecting a year out, what is your process into looking into players such as him, Hunter Henry, those who we will not see at all? Do you expect a discount that's going to happen? Do you expect that they retain their value?
I think this is one of those league-dependent questions, right? Mm-hmm. So, if I have a team that has no shot of competing this year, the first guys I'm trying to go out and get are Guice and Hunter Henry. Because, I still have long-term faith in them. But, football year to year changes so much in terms of we all think we know how teams are going to look a year from now, but it changes so much. So if I'm kind of competing, I'm knocking Guice down a little bit. But so basically, if I'm in a rebuild, I'm targeting Guice. If I always felt like I was a championship contender and someone will give me a good package for Guice, I'd certainly consider that. So I think anytime someone can't contribute for at least a year, you have to knock his stock a little bit down for me. But I think that depending on your team, you should be looking to potentially acquire him, or if there are people that have frozen his value and will give you a top 3 value in return. Like, obviously I'm not there. If you're a competitor, you're not looking for a first round pick in 2019 right now, but I'm you know what I'm trying to say, like, yeah, the equivalent of that.
Absolutely.
I would do that.
Mm-hmm.
But that also goes back to the fact that so many people struggle to accurately analyze their own team, right? Because whenever anyone's done drafting, they're all like, I got an A, my team's fantastic, and then 2 weeks into the season, a couple guys suck and they're like, well, my team's the worst ever. Like, it goes back to preseason overreaction. Like, if you can take advantage of that, so if you can actually just analyze your team and accurately assess it and understand its strengths and weaknesses and its whether or not it's realistic to think you have a competitive chance to win a championship. That's going to put you ahead of the field as is. And once you can start making those decisions, I think that's when you know what to do with guys like Guice and Hunter Henry.
Absolutely, and we're always moving. Their pieces are always moving. The values are always going to you need constant evaluation, and that is done by reading the field, right? Reading how others would react, how your team, and have an honest assessment of that. You've mentioned several times, and it sounds like the theme here is to be as objective as possible with yourself. What are some, I guess I'm throwing a random curveball at you, but what are some of the things that stand in the way of people being honest and objective about their own team?
I mean, this is a tough question. I mean, I think Evan Silva would call it tribalism, right? That's what he always refers to it on as Twitter. But I think it's the same thing with people with their favorite team. Like, I know that there's going to be a mean tweet section at the end of this, and a couple people made fun of me for being a Jets fan or whatever it is. But I try to be a realistic Jets fan as well. And last year they were one of the worst rosters in the NFL. They went 5-11, and guys before the season were predicting 9-7, 10-6, 11-5. People were like, "Well, if Hackenberg does great, this team goes 12-4 and make it." I was like, "See, this is the problem: is that people start, instead of doing analysis on what's most likely, they do analysis on what they want." And I think that's the problem: is that you can't build anything based on what you want to happen. You have to build things on what you think will happen and be able to adjust to that and plan for kind of good and bad and be able to make those adjustments accurately. I mean, I would love to draft Todd Gurley in round 2 this year, but I'm not going to plan for that to happen. But that's the way people treat their fantasy team so often, is where they're so unrealistic about their chance to compete, or I've got a top 3 team, and then they have one running back who's projected to be a starter this year, and it's just kind of like, if you need everything to break your way, is it possible it happens? Of course it is. But if you're planning on the unlikely to happen consistently, you're going to have unfavorable results. Is that a fair way to answer the question?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think that puts it in a good way for people not to be overly optimistic or people to be overly pessimistic about their team right now, but they need to bounce their ideas. They need to have some form of being objectivity, because like you said, every time we finish a draft, it's like my team is going to be a winner. And the closer we get to the season, the more people are likely to say my team's a winner right off the bat, right? They're drafting like it's a redraft team.
Yep, and then week 2 happens, right? And you draft Antonio Brown, and Antonio Brown has 2 slow weeks. And you're like, well, is Antonio Brown washed up now? That's the other really key part, is understand when the dips are most likely going to happen, when the ups and downs are going to happen. And if you can start getting a sense of how your other league owners kind of react to things, take advantage of that. And you remember, right now, Aaron Rodgers is undoubtedly QB1 on earth in any format. And 2 years ago, he had 4 mediocre games, and people were talking about, should we switch Brett Hundley? If you ever need confirmation that people overreact to anything, they wanted to bench Aaron Rodgers for Brett Hundley. Just think about that sentence. That was a thing that was not talked about by one person. It was talked about by the national media. People overreact to everything. And I think it's part of having a weekly sport, right, where something happens and you just sit on it for a week. Right, when you do baseball or basketball, there's a new game the next day, we're updating the sample quickly. People sit on football, and there's so much media coverage that everything gets blown out of proportion, and we constantly, because everything around us is getting blown out of proportion, we start blowing things out of proportion in our own mind.
Absolutely, and that is what we'll see again this year, because it happens every single year. Regardless of how great a player is, people are soon to forget the history and the talent that's behind a certain player, and the regression will come sooner or later. And we're going to expect some craziness in the first few weeks. Of course, when we pass 4 weeks, it's already been a month, and so people have a lot of time to fester with their thoughts and begin driving or creating such a narrative that they soon believe in their own story. And that is definitely not a way to be objective about your team, about your chances of winning. and making proper moves in Dynasty.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you can. If you're a lesser team, you want to do that even more. So there was a team I took over, and I had 102 last year, right? And I traded 102 to 104. I think I lost out on Fournette and got Joe Mixon. And for that trade down, I got a second that year, and the guy's first the following year because no one cares about first that year. And I really studied his roster before I did the trade, and I was like, this guy's got a chance to suck. And then it was 101 the next year. So I traded 102 for 101, 104 in a second rounder. And it's like, if you can start really analyzing rosters objectively as well as your own, that's how you get way ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's kind of rambling there, but I just
No.
I really want to hammer that point home that being able to accurately kind of understand your place in the league and is just I think it's such an edge because you really you get ahead of everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, Eliot, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I would like to part. Last year, we are able to see the return of your son, Deshaun Watson. He is making great strides and looking fantastic. It was a great preseason. Even though it was preseason, it was a great show. Now, we're going to talk about your second favorite relative. I have no idea if he's your son, your grandson, your cousin. Who is Baker Mayfield to you?
This is a record. If we were not recorded, we'd have a different answer here, and I would make some sort of joke about Baylor where Baker says, "Remember who dad is." No, listen. Baker is QB2 of my life. Watson is QB1. I mean, breaking news on the podcast. My girlfriend got into the Sherlock show on CBS. This is relevant. And she loves the Lucy Liu character, whose name is Watson. She really likes Sherlock. So she's like, Watson's really growing on me, and I think Watson Crist is a really great name. So we're getting close, man. We're getting close on being able to name the. I mean, I have no idea if or when that'll happen, but now I have motivation if we can actually name him Watson. But it's Watson, it's Baker, and then it's Sam Darnold. As much as I love the Jets, he's still in a distant third. Like, he's the redheaded stepchild, and Deshaun's the favorite son, but Baker's like the youngest kid who you're obsessed with too. So I don't really know if I have an answer for family members, but I do love both of them, and they're near and dear to my heart.
Absolutely. And that is fantastic to hear. So now we're heading to the last section. We have a lot of people contributing to tonight's show. They all love you, Eliot. You are a big presence in Twitter, and not just Twitter. They are loving the contents that you're putting up there. We have a quote here from Coach X. Your Twitter apparently is efficient and hilarious. You have a response to Coach.
I know XX is a buddy of mine, actually, and that was the hilarious part. I'm glad people pick up on that because some people are missing the joke. Like yesterday, Down with Damon tweeted out with the new Baker Mayfield boxers, like who would actually wear Baker's number on your junk? And I put the slow gif of like someone raising their hand as a joke, and someone quote tweeted it like, "Could you imagine ever thinking that something like this is okay to say?" And I was like, bro, are you okay? Like, what's going on?
Why so serious?
So
I know, man. It's crazy how people react on Twitter. But I would agree with him. You are efficient in the way you tweet, and it's hilarious. I get that what you're tweeting out. All right, Jason Tran, our friend here, tweeted, "You are a Ryan Hodge impersonator." A little background on this.
Ryan Hodge is an Eliot Crist impersonator since he's the one that copies all my tweets. But you know what? Thank God we both have our pictures up, and people have seen us on different podcasts. We're actually the same podcast at the same time, so people believe we're not the same person. He thinks it's so funny. Like I talk to Ryan every day. He's a partner with the Quant over there at the Power Hour, and he thinks it's so because every time someone points it out, like they've never seen it before. And different guys throughout the industry make jokes. Sometimes people subtweet me or talk crap about me through his tweet because they think he's making fun of me, and then he rips them because they were trying to come at me. It's hilarious. The only time that he took it too far was when I made the actual TQE the announcement, and then he copied that he also got the same
Oh
thing
my
too.
god.
He
Okay,
took that
yeah.
one too far and deleted that one.
Ryan, you gotta know your boundaries, man. He's hilarious, but and that is the truth, ladies and gentlemen. He is not the Ryan Hodge impersonator. Ryan Hodge is the Eliot Crist impersonator. All right, we got two tweets. Of course, we're mentioning you are a Jets enthusiastic homer, torture Jets fan. Both can be true at the same time. How are you feeling about your
I can't believe I
Jets?
got Homer. Homer blew my mind. Like, of all the things I thought I would get, I don't. I'm no pessimistic Jets fan. I never think they're going to be good. And I guess I'm a homer. I don't know.
Well, you do have a long history with the Jets. I don't know how long actually, but how are you feeling about your Jets?
Any amount of time is too long.
Yeah. Well, you have a team, and it's a swing upwards. From my perspective, at least from an outsider's perspective, I really am impressed what Darnold is up to with his flaws, with his abilities, but he's not pressured to start. What is your thoughts on your Jets team this year?
Low expectations. You know, last year I really wanted them to lose so they could be in a good position. This year I just kind of want to see growth. You know, it's not necessarily about the wins and losses for me. It's about Sam Darnold decision making. It's about see if Anderson can build off his year before. It's about trying to get to next offseason and find a running back because all of them are not good. How does Jamal Adams, Marcus May take a step? How big of an impact does Jermaine Johnson have moving Claiborne to cornerback 2? Can this team ever find a pass rusher? You know, there was a report today that they might get Khalil Mack, which would make me much more intrigued about the upside of the season. But ultimately, I'm hoping for a Rams or Eagles year 2 next year. Like, not Super Bowl, but just in terms of giant step forward with a lot of salary cap to build a roster around Darnold. But the whole year for me is just how does Darnold look and how does he improve week to week? He's going to have some bad moments. That was in his film. I think you can also see that he's going through progressions. He can make quick decisions. He's got a cannon. I understand he hasn't taken a lot of shots downfield, but some of that is situational football as well.
Yeah.
We got to stop. This is off the Jets topic, but there's so many talented analytical people, right? So many. And the thing they hammer home all the time is how important sample size is. And then we get to preseason, and it's all the data that's out there, and we're sample size is about like 12 or 15 plays, and making final statements on guys.
I know.
I feel like if you're gonna preach sample size, you can't then use preseason stats for much, to be honest. But yeah, it's all about Sam Darnold. I know that was not related to the Jets, but I've just seen people knock his yards per attempt. And
oh my gosh,
me,
that is crazy.
I don't.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
crazy
that
for
was
people to cite preseason stats. We are looking at preseason performance more so. That's more useful than looking at yards per attempt or completion percentages.
Right.
Awesome,
No,
awesome.
100%.
We have FF Wheeler tweeting in better than yours, meaning your Twitter is better than anyone else's. He is a fan of your tweet.
Yeah, I like that. Can you tweet that? I need more positivity in my life like that, man. Most of the tweets I get back are not positive.
And we're rolling on to the positivity. We got Larry Long, fan bleeping tastic. That's your Twitter. That's how he describes your Twitter. So,
Larry, you're the man, brother. I appreciate it.
And the last one, I cannot agree with it anymore. Oklahoma Dougie from our friend at the Dynasty 101 HQ. He's a new writer there. He says you are a must follow, and I agree. Ladies and gentlemen, follow Eliot at Eliot Crist. It's on the screen. You can follow him, gain from his knowledge, and subscribe to the Quant Edge if you want to play like the pros and win, because they have fantastic tools in the making. I've gotten a little glimpse of it. And Eliot, why don't you tell people where they can find your work, what you're up to next, what kind of work you're producing next, and whatever you can tell them about your work for the 2018 NFL season.
Absolutely. So you can follow me on Twitter at Eliot Crist. You can follow the Quant Edge at the Quant Edge. Go to thequantedge.com. If you want to call it the Quantum Edge and search that, that'll also come up. If you go to thequantumedge.com, it'll take you to our site. Quant, by the way, just means it's a form of math. We're giving you a mathematical edge doing analytical work. We have created 4 tools. 3 are currently out in the public. The first is the head-to-head tool where you can compare any 2 players and their matchup. You can compare heat maps, any week-to-week metrics you want. Rankings are done by tiers. Percentiles to really understand the difference between RB2 and RB5 might be as big as the difference between RB5 and RB15, whatever it is. And then our wide receiver cornerback matchups is broken down, wide receivers, tight ends, safeties, linebackers by route type, by where they line up on the field, by how each perform in coverage. You can create your own data visualizations. Our injury tool is groundbreaking. There's nothing out there like it, where you can take a player off the field and see his impact, offense or defense. When I say off the field, I don't mean when he missed a game. I mean every time he didn't play a snap. We're comparing when he was on the field versus when he was off the field by 10 different predictive metrics. And then any offensive player, you can see how he impacted every fantasy relevant player. So, like, we want to take an offensive lineman off the field, and we see that Aaron Rodgers yards per attempt drop by a yard when David Bakhtiari comes off the field. Or, when Antonio Brown goes up, we see Juju Smith's market share jumps by like 16%. It's stuff like this to start being able to react to injuries. And then we're going to have an optimizer as well. We're really close on finishing that up, and that'll be up for the season. And you can, and on top of that, what I'm going to be doing along with my team of 9 other content producers is we're going to have about 25 exclusive podcasts and articles on season-long content, on DFS content, on betting content, stuff for the draft, or stuff for draft, not the draft, but the platform draft. And I'm going to be producing, or I'm going to have my own podcasts, about 4 or 5 articles a week on top of that as well. And right now, if you go to thequantedge.com, you can sign up using promo code Eliot. You'll get 15% off for the season, which will make it just $84.99 for the entire season. 6 months of all these tools, when a lot of our competitors will charge you $70 for a month. So we think we're the best value. We're offering tools that other people aren't, as well as the tools that they are. We think our stuff's gonna be simpler for you as well, with more content than anybody else. So we think we're building something really special, and anyone that would check it out, I'd really appreciate it.
Absolutely, and that will definitely, these are cutting edge tools, people, and definitely take advantage of it. It'll help you in any format: Dynasty, redraft, DFS, whatever it is. Thank you so much for joining me, Eliot. Guys, check it out. It will be in the YouTube description. And can you repeat the promo code again?
Eliot, E-L-I-O-T.
E-L-I-O-T. All right, guys, go ahead, win your league using the Quant Edge. Thank you so much for joining me.